So because of your great experience in national security, I would like to ask you about some current issues and from your point of view, from intelligence for security point of view, what do you think, which part of the world is the most important right now, or which part of the world is the most unpredictable, which country?
I think the most important parts of the world right now are in the Middle East, and I think a lot of people would agree with that. And it's very unpredictable. We see countries splitting. We see the war in Syria, problems in Iraq still, despite the election yesterday, Afghanistan. And I think you're seeing the post-World War I political order that was established by the British and the French in much of that region, collapsing, and we don't know what's going to replace it. And it's very difficult for any of the major powers to come together to try to work through this with the governments on the ground. Mm-hmm. So I think it's the Middle East. There are other areas that
Russia.
Close. Russia does. China. These are major issues. The Russians are essentially acting in terms of revenge, because after the Cold War they were dismissed, humiliated, and Putin did not take well to this. So much of what you're seeing with the Russians is to recover what Russia once was, to be taken seriously as a great power. China just keeps expanding, mostly economically, but they're also doing it militarily. They just launched their first homemade aircraft carrier. But the Chinese are, their main goal is economic. Mm-hmm. And so they're all over the world looking for oil and looking for commercial interests. Mm-hmm. Europe is not in the same predicament, but I think Europe right now is not sure where it's headed at all. We see the American. I'll say some of this too in the panel discussion. We see some of the American-led liberal order collapsing, and it's not likely that it'll ever be repaired or reconstructed. So history's moving on. And we're seeing in many cases a renationalization of politics. We're seeing that here. We're seeing it in Hungary. We're seeing it in parties that didn't win but came quite close to winning in other places here. And a lot of this is driven by the migrant, the refugee issue. Mm-hmm.
So let's talk more about Russia, because we are in Poland, and for us it's a main issue because of our border, because of Donbass, because of Crimea. Mm-hmm. What do you think about this conflict? Is it kind of a frozen conflict right now? And what do you think about Baltic states and Poland in that case?
I think that to some extent we have a frozen conflict. There's probably more than one frozen conflict going on. Kosovo is one. Right now in eastern Ukraine, yes, but that flares every once in a while. So yes, I think they can be described as frozen conflicts. Russia has also become very good at cyber issues and producing information, and in hybrid warfare. And I think if anything goes on in the Baltics, it will be along those lines. You notice that when the Donbass and Crimea happened, the West didn't do anything because it can't. I mean, we're not going to risk war between two heavily armed nuclear powers over the Donbass. And I don't think that we are prepared. And I think Putin knows this, and I don't think we're prepared to deal to go to war with Russia over very much. And so to that extent, NATO is really more of a psychological boost, more of a tripwire than it is really a threat to the Russians.
For President Donald Trump, Korea is a great issue right now.
Right.
What do you think about this meeting a few days ago, and what do you expect with this meeting in DC in 10 days from today with South Korea leader?
South Korea or North Korea? Are you talking about?
No, he's the president of South Korea
yes, that
is
meeting
going
first,
to
yes.
DC. Yeah.
I think that there's two meetings then. There's the meeting with the president of South Korea, and then there's a meeting with Kim Jong-un. The meeting with South Korea is to get essentially on the same page, to get the South Koreans' understanding of what the North wants, to coordinate positions.
So without surprise.
So that there's not surprise, because the South Koreans understand better than we do what the North Koreans are like and what's going on. The concern I have is that President Moon of South Korea is a Trump fan, and the worst thing he could do would be to tell Trump what he wants to hear, because of course it's very easy for Trump to want flattery. He wants flattery. He wants people to almost worship him. The second meeting with Kim.
The most important.
Well, I think there's a real possibility with it, but it's not for the reasons that a lot of scholars think it is. I think it's a number of people in American political circles are arguing that Trump's tough talk and his hard nosed position, forced Kim to come to the table. I don't think that's it at all. I think what it is that Kim is really driving this because he has what he wants. He has intercontinental ballistic missiles. He has nuclear warheads. He doesn't need the test site anymore. He's got what he wants. His father and his grandfather never had that. So I think what Kim is saying is that to Trump is, I'm your equal. I have the weapons I want. I can bargain with you now from a position of strength. I saw what happened to Saddam Hussein and to Gaddafi. When they didn't have nuclear weapons, they were destroyed. And I don't think he will make that same mistake.
So a few words more about Donald Trump policy. What do you think? Do you think that the world needs new nuclear agreement?
I think we need more than one nuclear agreement. We are in a...
But I mean, with Iran.
With Iran?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I think that was an enormous mistake, because the last thing we should want, is to have Iran not bound by anything. So Trump says this is a bad deal, and instead of working on points he thinks were not good.
Yeah, why it wasn't good?
Yeah, he makes a grand gesture of dismissing the whole thing. It's the way Trump works. But I think it's a terrible mistake. I think we should work as quickly as possible to try to recover that. The other thing is now the Iranians are playing very well. They said we will stay with the 2015 agreement. We will work with the Europeans, and
because now Great Britain, France, Germany are against this.
Yes, they are, and this not only affects us politically; it's going to affect business, because if the United States begins to put conditions on sanctions back on to Iran, they'll just deal with the Europeans, and we will not have the business. So I think it's an unfortunate situation all the way around.
Do you think that Iran is more dangerous right now than 2 days or 3 days ago?
No, I don't. I don't think it's any more dangerous. They don't have nuclear weapons at this point, and they keep saying they don't want them. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But let's work on the assumption that they would want them. Throwing this deal away really says to the Iranians, go ahead. We have no way to stop you now. There's no agreement in place to stop you. So the Europeans are unhappy with it. The Israelis love it. The administration loves it, and the Bush administration. I mean the Trump administration. You notice John Bolton, the
National advisor.
yeah, the new national security advisor, has even threatened to punish American companies that ignore new sanctions. It's going to be even more poorer for American companies.
In your opinion, what should be the most important issue for Poland and for European Union in security?
I think, I don't know if you were there this morning, but I talked about dealing with reality, and I think that we're not doing that in Europe as much as we should. I think that we have to recognize that the American liberal, post-World War II liberal order is over, that we are actually drifting further apart, between the U.S. and Europe are drifting further apart, not coming closer together, that the concept of transatlantic community is just a slogan. We can agree on values, democracy, human rights, civil society, but we're not agreeing as much on interests. And I think that the Europeans do not do nearly enough themselves for their own. They have to come together. Just like Angela Merkel said the other day. She's right. She said that Europe has to now look after itself. I think that as much as I disagree with Trump, I think this is a good idea. It's a good thing for Europeans to do that, to look after by themselves, to look after their security, rather than to rely on us. The problem is that Europeans often are too anxious to say, well, what does Washington want, rather than what does Warsaw want, what does Berlin want? And I think there has to be much more concern with that.
And last question about your visit here in Poland and about DMGS. What do you think can be a connection between Poland and the United States, and what is the role of DMGS?
Well, I mean, right now DMGS has a small role. I think what we're doing is trying to educate, to bring people in from the U.S. and from Europe, and eventually other places that will be able to come together to look at hard facts and make sense out of them for your generation, leadership that's coming, to work to ensure that a new generation of American and European leaders have good analytic skills, have good body of knowledge behind them, are experts, and that they take it seriously.
But where they can use these skills? Only in intelligence or what?
No, not at all. Not at all. I think that it can be used in intelligence, in diplomacy, in the military, in NGOs or non-state actors, in business. I think what we're trying to do is teach students how to be serious analysts, to recognize change when it happens, to not be content to rest on the past. I think the connection between Poland and the United States is a deep, long connection, and
it's good history.
And a good history between the two countries. And we have a lot of Polish Americans, mostly around Chicago. A lot of Poles moved to the United States. Because Poland has had a difficult history for much of the time, and it was a reason for people to leave and come over. I think there's a deep affection between Poles and Americans, and this is a good thing, but it should not mean that that Poles or Europeans should not be taking seriously what they need to do for the future.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure.